Hi everybody, it's Cash. Welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me today. I've got something really special for you. I thought I'd take a look at the flow of energy for the United States of America in 2025, because this is a pivotal year in US history, also the economy in the USA for the next 12 months. And talking of pivotal years, Britain is really going through massive changes, and so I thought I would take a look at the UK over the next 12 months as well. Plus, and this is the bonus, I'm going to give you sets of pictures for each individual sign for the next 12 months. I was going to say this is by popular request, but actually, in a way, it was, because I tried this out on the Enlightened Beings Club channel. And by the way, this will be on the other channel as well, because the audiences don't necessarily always overlap, so I want both audiences to see this. But I tried this out on the other channel for a while, and I wasn't absolutely sure it worked, because it's about energy. It's not predictions the way horoscopes are. But I gave it a try, and enough people wrote to me to say, my lordy, the pictures came true, for me to give it another go here.
Lovely.
I don't know how this works. I don't know why it works. It doesn't make any sense to my journalistic brain, but apparently it made sense to a lot of people when I did it before. So I thought I would do that, and we might as well begin. Oh no, before we begin, there is another video up on the Enlightened Beings Club channel right now about the intention that's embedded into the walls of buildings and into art and so on. I've had a lot of really great feedback from that. Thank you to everybody who wrote. But that's up now on the Enlightened Beings Club channel, and you are welcome to go over there and see it. I will put a link to it down below in the description. But I thought we'd just get on with the signs right now. We'll come back to the USA later on, but we'll start with Aries. Now, when I went into the energy of Aries for 2025, I got the strangest image. Aries, that's Aries there, was floating over something, like a bumpy surface, and as it floated, there were clouds on either side, and it was reaching out, and these sparks were flying out of the clouds to either energize or irritate the person there. And I thought what this meant was that for the next year, there is going to be an opportunity to engage, to get fully sucked in this way, that way, other people's dramas, what's going on in the world, anything that's problematic. You can get engaged in all of that. It's going to pull you this way and that. But these things, whatever they were, these issues, these pulls, didn't necessarily need to wreck your life or even impact you if you decided to stay in the central channel and go all the way through. You could go down, you could go from side to side, but the wise Aries, I think, will just retain a certain amount of distance, a certain amount of aloofness. Watch it all go by. Feel the pull, maybe get a little involved each way, but don't get too engaged in it all. Keep your distance. Keep your calm. Stay in a state of harmony, because I think as the year ends, things could get a little tricky in the world, in America, in Europe, and so on. And any stamina you've built up, any inner strength, any fortitude you have built up by not wasting it on all these side issues will stand you in good stead, and you'll be able to rise above any other problems that come along from 25 into 26. So it's a year for withdrawing your energies from all those vampires that would suck it out of you, and also to rise above any problems that you see in the news. Maybe don't watch the news. Maybe stay aloof from that as well. Just plow your course. Stay on your track. And things will be fairly even-handed, I think, for Aries throughout the year. On to Taurus now. When I went into the energy of Taurians, they were figure skating. Imagine a deep valley with a path of ice at the bottom. Usually when you get a valley, it means there's no other way to go. You just got to go straight ahead until you come out the other side. And when people are figure skating, it sort of means that things are easy and breezy and it's going okay. The problem was that in the pictures, Taurus was figure skating backwards. And that can mean cockiness, it can mean lack of attention, it can mean assuming that just because the path is straight, you don't need to really worry about it or about the details or whatever. But in this particular set of circumstances, Taurus needed to look over their shoulder and make sure they were going in the right direction because the path forked somewhere down the line. And if you went down one side, it just came to a dead end. I mean, it's nothing drastic or anything, but it was just a feeling of, oh, rats. Maybe I should have paid more attention after all. I didn't really want to go down here. I'm going to have to go back up and continue on the higher path. It was just a matter of being circumspect, looking where you were going, making sure that nobody made choices for you or that you didn't, through not paying attention, see that there was some kind of dead end up ahead. On the other hand, the higher path also required a certain amount of attention because there was a step up. There was a little bit of a challenge. And you had to be looking over your shoulder to make sure that you didn't trip over that step when you got to it. So in other words, keep your antenna up. Be circumspect. Look where you're going. Take nothing for granted. After that, the path seemed to continue on fairly straight, and there was a very bright light at the end, as though there would be a very, very positive culmination to continuing on this path if you took care along the way. And even if you didn't, even if you went down the little gully there and ended up at a dead end, you could come out of it, but it's just unnecessary, really. If you pay attention as you go, then you won't end up in that gully, and you won't trip over the step, and you'll be okay. This light was very powerful. It suggested that you have a goal, or even if you don't know what the goal is, you are heading in a particular direction. And I thought that was very, very encouraging. And presumably that will happen in 2026. On to Gemini now, my sign. I started doing Gemini just for me, really, which is how this whole video came about, because I was just doing me to see what the next year might be like, and then I thought, I'll do everybody else as well. I'm such a giving person. But anyway, on to Gemini, there I am. And it felt to me like a plodding year. Keeping on going was paramount. Just be the best you can be, do the best you can, don't quit, keep on going, even though it might seem a little uphill initially. In fact, the hill was a bit like the roof of a Cybertruck. On the other side, it got easier for a while and felt like a lot of fun, I thought. And then you just continued on. The trick was to have your intentions, stick with them, show a bit of follow-through, enjoy the easy parts, stick with the more challenging parts, just keep on going. This is not the time to give up. Then I thought, as the year wore on, the path began to tilt over, and I found it a little bit more difficult to stand upright. I felt myself slipping off. Now, this wasn't necessary, but there was a temptation just to, again, not pay attention, just keep on going and not really focus on the terrain itself, that there might be a slippery road up ahead or there might be a problem up ahead. Take nothing for granted, because what happened in the pictures was the little figure slid off the road and had to climb back on again. And there was a sort of valley there, a gulch, and things got a little pressurized as a result. So if you just keep on going, keep your wits about you and focus on fulfilling your intentions and your goals, Gemini, the pictures suggest that you'll be more than well equipped for dealing with any pressures later on in the year. But if you take your eye off the road, or start believing in your own publicity and thinking, I'm going to be fine, I don't need to focus on this, You could not notice that the road is a little slippery and slide right off, and you have to climb back on again in order to move forward. Do your very best in every single circumstance and see what happens. That was Gemini, which is quite good, really. I can warm to that as a Gemini. On to Cancer now. When I went into the energy of Cancerians, it felt a bit like one of those old Hot Wheels cars. Were they Hot Wheels where you pull them back and release them and they go the other way? It felt like that, like there was too much movement. There was too much propulsion out of the gate. And really you just wanted to have a smooth, easy, gentle go of things. But up ahead, the road narrowed. There was a gap you had to get through, a bit like going through a turnstile. And you had to be ready for this. I guess these preceding few weeks lead up to that, and as long as you didn't panic, as long as you took it in your stride and just stood upright, you could go through the little gap. Otherwise, this sudden squeezing could throw you off balance slightly. I don't know what this would be. It doesn't seem like a big deal at all. But it felt like something that came upon you and you had to just deal with it in a mature adult way rather than go, oh my God, at which point you would throw yourself right off balance. You still had to go through that little gap, but you just made it harder for yourself. I think there was a way of going through it whereby if you were circumspect, again, like other signs, if you were circumspect and just kept your wits about you, you would just slide through with ease and with elegance and then be on your way. If you did go slightly off trajectory, there had to be a mini period of reassessment, reevaluation, like, okay, I'm here. What do I do now? How do I rescue this? Of course, you were totally up to it, but you had to do this reassessment. It's a bit like when children fall out of a tree and they jump up and they go, okay, no bones broken, I'm fine. A bit like that. No bones broken, it's fine. You reassess and you move on. And up ahead, there was this split in the road again. One side went up and over, and the other side went down and up. They met on the other side. So this could be a challenge that somebody offers you, like an opportunity, or it could be something that you take on, or some other thing that happens to you where you go, oh, well, I guess I'll deal with this then, or, oh, I guess I'll deal with this then. If it's an opportunity, I guess I'll deal with this. And then it's short-lived and you move off and it's over. Or you go down and you don't quite know what that opportunity or that situation would have done for you. You sort of miss out in a way. Not a big deal, apparently, according to the pictures, because at the other side, you emerged and you're on the same path and it was okay. But there did seem to be something came along whereby you went, oh, I guess I could go up here. And if you do go up there, then it provided you with a short-lived experience of some kind that you could opt out of by going down and around. After this, the path ran into a wall. I assume that is the end of the year. And it felt to me in that particular energy like I was reaching the end of an era. Example would be, oh, I'm 30 next year. It's so easily believable. I'm 30 next year. How is that going to affect my life? Or next year I'm getting married. This will change everything. Or I'm going to have a baby next year, or whatever it might be. Something that had you thinking, wow, I wonder what the future holds, this new terrain I'm venturing into. My feeling also was that there was a temptation to overthink it. It was like, oh, what's going to happen? How will things be? When you don't know. You've just got to get into next year and tackle whatever happens. But there was that feeling of not even trepidation or worry or fear. Just, oh, this is going to happen. That's the end of this phase. Aries. I wonder how that's going to go. Overthinking rather than just trusting, having a little faith and following the direction, the current that your heart is leading you in. That's what that felt like. It was nothing terribly worrying, I didn't think. It was just about realizing that change might be in the offing, either because something was happening around you or because you've made a decision that was going to come to fruition in 2026. That's what that felt like. On to Leo. When I went into the energy of Leos, I got a strong sense of the person's soul wanting them to go higher, to go further, to fly. But their feet were temporarily fastened with straps to this weird podium thing. So every instinct within this little figure was to rise up and conquer and go far, but the physical was tied down with these little straps. And because of this tethering, maybe to the past, maybe to a current situation that doesn't feel right or doesn't seem to be going anyplace or whatever. It could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be a million different things. But because of this, some action was required, some decision to perhaps follow your soul's calling rather than stick to what has happened before, or stick with the people you've been with before, or keep on doing the job you've been doing before, whatever it might be. There was an urge within to escape this tether, this anchor that was holding you back. What was at issue here was personal freedom and authenticity. If you do break free, I felt that your ankles were quite sore and inflamed from being stuck in these straps. It might not be very comfortable at first, but perhaps the universe wants you to ask certain questions in the first few weeks of the year, like, who have I become? How did I get here? Is what I've done in my past something I want to keep on doing or repeat in my future? Or do I deserve something better, something higher? Is my soul calling me to go further and up rather than stay on the same track? That's what that felt like. And then around mid-year, timing is always difficult with this, but around mid-year, a wall suddenly jolted out at me from literally left field and forced me off course slightly. I had to go around it, so some adjustment is going to be necessary, and there might initially be a reaction of, whoa, what was that? Where did that come from? I didn't see that coming. But actually, it turns out to be way less of an issue than it seemed to be at the beginning on the face of it. And you went around it, it was like, oh, right, okay, fine, all right. And you moved on. Again, at the end of the road, there was a wall. And it could be, maybe, as with the previous sign, it could be about the end of an era. And how are you going to change? What are you going to do for yourself to move into 2026? How do you want the new year, this is the new year next year, to begin and to continue? A reassessment. We all do these reassessments at the end of the year, but this was particularly poignant, I thought. There was a hole in the wall, a little tunnel you could crawl through. So whatever obstacles there were, it was fine. You just went through this little hole and you got through the other side and you were fine. And when you did get to the other side, it seemed that things became a lot more carefree. You had been through whatever you'd been through. You'd made decisions about whatever you'd had to make decisions about. You'd faced up to certain realities about the world, about yourself, about any challenges you'd confronted. And now you were ready to emerge from 2025 into 2026. And 2026 looked fairly hopeful and carefree. As did 2025, to be perfectly frank with you. There was just that initial phase of responding to your soul's calling and saying, am I unnecessarily tethered to a set of circumstances, to a set of people, to a belief system, to a set of habits, or whatever it might be that isn't serving me and won't serve me in the long term. It belongs to the past, and I deserve more. I deserve better. And going for that, maybe, rather than staying stuck to that strange little platform pontoon thing with the straps. Break free is what the pictures seem to suggest. And there was a whole new world that probably would come to fruition for you in 2026. From Leo, we move on to Virgo. Is that the next one? When I went into the energy of Virgoans, there was a very interesting formation, a bunch of hatches, like doors in the ground, that were in a long line, I think stretching throughout the entire year, as a matter of fact, and they were waiting for you to open them. So you went to the first one, opened it, and a very wonderful, delightful, bright light shone in your face. Ooh, so something good was going to happen there. And then you went to the next one and opened that one. Ooh, more delights, more treats, more things to be happy and excited about. Then the next one, same thing. And it continued, I thought, to about the middle of the year, possibly, at which point you didn't, in the pictures, open any more. I couldn't quite work out why you wouldn't. Maybe you had too much on your plate at this point and didn't want to open anymore. Maybe, dare I say it, you got a bit complacent, like, oh, I have such a great life now, I don't need to do anymore. That kind of thing. But whatever it was, you didn't open any more hatches for the rest of the year. It's like, I guess I better go and fulfill this obligation, or I need to go there because I said I would, or something like that. You just got involved in other things, but it didn't seem like anything other than a pretty good year, certainly the first half, I thought. And then it was up to you whether you opened any more of these hatches. Hang on a second, let me just see if any more of them had lights in them. Yeah, I don't think you had the energy or the inclination to open anymore. Maybe the doors got heavier. It's like, oh, I guess I could open another one, but then it's like, I don't have the energy. That kind of thing. I couldn't get you to open any more, I don't think. No. Okay, so otherwise it seemed like a pretty good year, certainly the first half of the year for Virgoans. On to Librans now. There's Libra. This was quite interesting. It felt to me, and the pictures suggested this, it felt to me like you were being asked to move to a higher level, to something more challenging or more interesting or something more in line with your soul's path. And it would take effort. You'd have to make a decision about doing this. And it's like, okay, here I go. Because the little figure crawled onto that higher level and then took time to consider what had happened. It just sat around basically meditating and trying to figure out all the ramifications and the circumstances of this raised level. You didn't seem to want to move forward immediately until you had given adequate consideration to all the competing factors that were calling you in life to take action, to move forward and so on. Hang on a second, let me just figure this out. Let me make a decision about where I want to go, when I want to go, how fast I want to move. Don't rush me. It had that kind of feeling to it. Now, up ahead, there were clouds, dark clouds, and this is what was really interesting because I felt that Libra's path wound around. You've ever been in one of those very, very deep Norwegian-like valleys where there's little paths around the outside, but you're dwarfed by the scenery. It's enormous. And when there are clouds overhead, and you're standing high up here, you look down and you can see patches of sunlight moving along the valley and up the walls. And sometimes you're in sunlight, sometimes you're not. The sun goes in behind the clouds. You know that kind of feeling? It had that sense to it of moving along a path that had twists and turns in it, ins and outs, around you go, following your nose, and being able to see perhaps the troubles of the world, or other people's circumstances where they were going through tough times or easy times and then tough times again and so on. But you were over here following the path around. You had a choice, it struck me, whether to become fully engaged in other people's woes or the woes of the world or what was going on in the news or whatever it might be. But you had a choice. You could just follow your nose, focus on your own interests, solving your own problems, resolving your own challenges in and out and around and about, and ultimately you would go down the path into sunshine and everything would be fine. If you decided instead to get involved in the clouds and worrying if it might rain on you, and if you got involved in all of that, it's a complete waste of your energy. Disengage from other people's problems. Focus on making your world, your private world, the best that it can be for the next 12 months. Now on to Scorpio. Scorpio's pictures were very, very intriguing because you started the year on a platform in the pictures and you were looking down at a dark pool of murky water as if to say, I don't think I like the way 2025 is shaping up. January looks horrible. Really, we've got to go through all this? But the weird thing was that you were looking at the wrong thing. I mean, I saw this pool of murky water, and it was a channel. It went into the future. And I suppose if you were so minded that you really liked being in that state of mind, of murkiness and worry or whatever, you could just dive into it and swim off. But you didn't need to, because that was the path, or the channel, on the left-hand side. If you went around that and made a more positive decision, there was an undulating pathway that looked a bit like piano keys at your glockenspiel, but undulating. So it would have mini ups and downs, but it was a lot easier and more optimistic and harmonious than that dark, murky channel, it struck me. And so it continued on, and I walked along the optimistic path rather than bothering about the murkiness. I walked on, and at the end of the channel, so you would reach it anyway, I guess, even if you decided to swim in the murky water. At the end of the channel, there was a raised level. So you were heading towards this opportunity, this elevated position in terms of your location, your job, your relationships, or whatever it might be. This elevated position. Now, going along the glockenspiel path, you actually had to recognize this, acknowledge it as something you wanted, and clamber onto it. It wasn't automatic. If you missed it, then I guess the glockenspiel path just continued on. And you would look back and go, oh, I should have done that. That would have been quite fun. Maybe you look at it as an extension of the murky water and go, well, that wasn't going to be good anyway, so probably that won't be good. But that's not the case. You had to scramble onto it and go, right, this is for me. I claim this as my own, whatever it might be. It seemed to be later in the year. But that's where both paths were leading you. And so since they were, you may as well go down the happy glockenspiel path. Why swim through the channel of murky water and immerse yourself in whatever that might represent, anxiety or gloom or fears or I don't know what it was. But I know when I looked at it from the podium at the beginning of January, I looked down and thought, I don't want to go in there. And I was so relieved when I saw the other path that by sheer choice, I could go along this path, the undulating glockenspiel path. And I thought, oh, good, this will be kind of fun, more optimistic. So Scorpio definitely had a choice. And if it were me, and I were in the pictures, I would go along the glockenspiel and see what happened. On to Sagittarius. When I did the pictures for Sagittarius, the little figure was launching itself onto one of those gymnast bars that so often appears in the pictures. And it usually means single-mindedness, doing something that doesn't have a lot of leeway to it. You can't afford to fall off, and it might be a little too narrow for comfort, but boy, if you get a move on and you get the momentum going, It could be so much of an adventure. And that's what this felt like. You were far enough off the ground for me to think, oh, this must have a risk element to it. But you seemed, in the pictures anyway, to go, let's have an adventure. You never know unless you try. That kind of spirit, you know. You did this as well. Yes, you've got to have an adventure. You don't know until you try. Let's just go for it. I didn't see any other option, actually. I guess there was, where you could go down and across the valley floor or whatever, beneath the beam. But it did seem as though there was an impetus, there was an element of propulsion or momentum. And let's just do it. Let's just go and see what happened. It turns out that the beam, the gymnast beam, was between two Alps, Swiss mountains with snow on the top. And so it was defined. You only had to go to the other side. Could be way down the year, but you only had to go down to the other side and you were done. By the time you got to the other end, things had become a lot more complicated, or there were more opportunities for making choices. It wasn't so single-minded because there were other Alps there and pathways around them. So you might get there and go, oh, now what? What do I do? Which way shall I go? Maybe that's for 2026. You have to make those decisions. But it felt like, for the moment, it was more or less a matter of, should I do this or should I not do this? If I do it, I'm going to go for it. Whatever it might be. It could be any area of your life. But it did have a sense of, I can make this. And then when you got to the other side, there was, well, I've made it, but now what? Which way do I go? Very, very interesting. And good luck, frankly. On to Capricorn now. The other day, when I was doing these pictures, somebody texted me who was a Capricorn. Weirdly. And so I finished doing the pictures and then I texted her and said, this is what your pictures say for the next year. And she proceeded to give me how she thought her year was going to go. And it matched the pictures exactly. So here are the pictures I did for Capricorn. When I went into that energy, Capricorn was in a sling, you know, like a catapult sling. There was elastic there and there was a little harness, but the harness wasn't tight enough. The elastic was drooping along the ground. So it seems as though Capricorns are ready to move forward. Maybe you have a plan. Maybe you have an idea of what you'd like to do or where you'd like to go, what levels you'd like to climb to. Maybe you have a goal and intention. But it wasn't ready. It struck me, you know, with a catapult, you have to pull it back to tighten the elastic, and then you let it go, and whatever you've got in it flies off over there. It was like that. It was almost as if, in order to tighten the elastic, you had to take a few steps back, reassess, make firmer plans, explore more. Do a little research or develop the idea more, whatever it might be. But Capricorn had to go a few paces back before the elastic was tight enough and it went boing and launched itself forward. Now, it got so far that it managed to grip onto a pole, a vertical pole that was in the ground. I assume this was the target destination. If I make the right plans, that's where I'm going to end up. And the little Capricorn figure slid down the pole. Okay, done it. I'm here. Now what? Ready for the next phase, where work would be involved, where choice would be involved, and faith, a certain amount of self-belief that things were going to be fine, that the universe has your back, that it's all going to work out. You'd have to follow your nose. The road was windy. It had lots of complications is probably too strong a word, but lots of toing and froing, things that had to be adjusted and moved, and oh yeah, we'll do that and not that, and feeling your way as you go. But it was exciting, I think, and it certainly began in the first half of the year with a degree of propulsion and direction and intention that could set you up for the second part of the year. But the preparation and setting the intention was not the work. The work began once you got to your destination, slid down the pole, and made this thing, whatever it is, relationship, work, job, whatever, make it function adequately to suit your needs. A lot of adjustment along the way, a lot of toing and froing, but it seemed positive, albeit a challenge, but maybe a challenge you're up to, and one that is fruitful for you going into the new year. Having done Capricorn, let's move on to Aquarius now. This was particularly intriguing, and it took me quite a while to figure out what the Aquarian pictures actually meant. Because I didn't draw this very well. It was so complicated, you just have to put up with a doodle. But there was a line of trees, like in a forest or a wood or something, and you could just walk past the trees. It may not provide an instant path for you, but just keep on going, in and out of the trees, through the undergrowth. Things will eventually work out. Or, in a sense of overthinking, or panic, even, or looking for trouble, or looking for things to worry about, you could take the line of trees, tip them over, and pull up all the roots, and make your path, force your path through the roots with all the dirt and the damp and the moss and the insects and stuff. You could do that if you wanted to. If you wanted to be really willful, you could make your own path, but it felt like a lot of effort. Because in truth, what was happening here in the bigger picture, as far as I could tell, was that the universe saw you where you are now, and went, yeah, we need him or her /her to be over there. But does he, she, have the patience to make it over there? It's that kind of conundrum. So forgetting the soil and the trees and whatever, I just kept on following you through. And if you waded through the undergrowth and the thickets and the confusion of not quite knowing where everything was going, you came to a vast crater, a huge pit. It's like, oh no, what's this? The universe was actually working in your favor, because you had to walk around the outside of the crater, the pit, whatever it was. It was forcing your hand. You thought this was going to be the solution, but no, carry on going. It's like a video game. Just carry on going around. You can't go down. Then there was more undergrowth, but you were very close now to finding the real path. And you went through the undergrowth, you slammed through all the thickets and bushes and stuff, and then you came to the path. And that path was the path you were meant to be on. That path is where the universe was directing your feet all this time. So I would say, based on these pictures anyway, ease off the throttle. Don't be willful. Take the pretty way. Not the one with moss and worms and stuff. Just take the pretty way, wade through, keep on going, a bit like the Gemini pictures. Keep on putting one foot in front of the other, pushing aside the undergrowth, the foliage, the vegetation. Just keep on pushing through, weave through the trees, whatever comes. And when you get to that moment where you think, phew, it's all going to be fine, and you discover that there's a pit ahead of you and you've got to keep on going, keep on going. Keep on walking around until you reach the path, because the path is there. That's where the universe wants you to be. And all this time that you've been thinking, confound it, why can I not find my way? All this time the universe was going, come on, shoot. I've got your best interests at heart if only you will trust me and follow the path that I am setting for you. It was about trust and faith and not being willful, I thought. And you would end up, by the end of the year, by 2026, or maybe sooner, I don't know about time, but whenever it happened, you would end up heading in the direction that you went, great, about, fantastic, about, or whatever. And finally, have we done them all yet? Finally, we come to Pisces. That's the last one. Pisces, they're looking a little miffed that they're last. Sorry about that, Pisces. But I went into the energy of Pisces. And when I did, this was kind of odd. Pisces was standing in a tray. That's the best way I can describe it. A tray that was on runners. The tray was kind of rusty, I thought. It was a little uncomfortable underfoot. But the tray was moving along the runners. It had a direction to it. And although the tray was limiting, Pisces couldn't walk around very far, or could just sit down maybe or whatever, but there wasn't a lot of room for maneuver, but it was heading somewhere, even if you didn't know it, even if you felt confined by circumstances or by relationships or by a job or something. It was moving steadily, slowly, in a very definite direction. Now, as the weeks go by, there may be moments when you go, well, this is a little bit confining, isn't it? I wish there were more, or I wish I could do this instead of that, or I wish I had more money to spend on that, whatever it might be, whatever the confines are here. But the great thing about this tray, which was steadily moving along these runners, was that it not only offered constriction, which I suppose would be a negative in some people's eyes, but it offered constriction, comfort, the familiar, or whatever. But it also, when times in the world got a little upsetting or tough or whatever for other people, it also provided a bit of a sanctuary. You still had your little tray. So there are times this year when you will feel like, oh, I wish I could do more or have more or be somewhere else or be with somebody else, and you feel the constriction. And then at other times later on, like the floor may drop away and other people are going through some stuff and you go, oh, well, I guess I do have my tray. I am on my runners. I'm pretty safe here. And then if there is a narrow valley, valleys usually mean constriction of a different kind. Challenges, times when things aren't always clear about how they're going to go. You may say, well, yeah, it's not fun for that person. It's not good for those people over there, but I've still got my little tray. There will be pros and cons to your situation, I would guess, in the next year. So you may as well start off in a state of gratitude and acceptance and allowance for what you have, rather than resenting it or feeling what's wrong with it or criticizing it or judging it, because the very thing that you are judging and criticizing and wishing were different could be the very thing that proves incredibly reassuring later in the year when events happen in the world or other people go through stuff. You're fine. You're on your little tray on runners. And at some point, you'll get off the tray and you get off the runners. But you will have been safe and secure and contented within your small environment for as long as it takes. That's what that felt like to me. Anyway. Now, since I'm doing the year ahead, I thought I'd take a look at the UK for the next year. Britain has been going through a very, very tough time. New Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer doesn't seem to be tremendously ineffectual. People are now saying openly and often that Brexit needs to be reversed. I said when Britain left the EU that it would be the biggest disaster ever. That's exactly what is happening. And people are now saying we need to get back in on some kind of terms. You need to sort this out. But Sir Keir Starmer, for all that he has some pluses, is quite a a weak man, and the country appears on the face of it to be going down the toilet pretty fast. There's lots of immigration issues and economic issues. It's just a very, very bad time for Britain. Things will improve, but I thought I'd take a look at the year ahead and see what pictures came. And when I did, I was in a tunnel, like you get in metro systems, tube systems like in Britain and so on, underground system, where you have a train and it goes along a tunnel. Well, there was that kind of tunnel, but at platform level, there were bars across. No train, but just bars across. And Britain, or the British people, were in a car that was going under the bars. They should be up here on the higher level, but they were stuck below these bars week after week, month after month after month, shooting along, hoping for the best, careering forward, but not necessarily getting anywhere of value. Things were dark down there. They were way below where they should be. The economy was in a mess. People were unhappy. And in the pictures, the car went under these poles, these rods, and then when it came out the other side, there was a brief period of sunshine, so there maybe something good happens. Then there was another tunnel, same thing. And then I thought another tunnel. I may be wrong, but I think there was a third tunnel going far down the road. And before the car reached that tunnel, it screeched to a halt, swerved into a wall. The driver, the British people, got out and said, no, we're done. That's enough suffering, enough austerity, enough deprivation, enough conflict and unsettling environments. No, we're done. And the little figure, got out of the car and went through a doorway into the sunlight. Relief was coming in some form. The British people would only take this for so much. Maybe they vote the Labour Party, which is currently in power, out of office and vote Reform UK in or somebody else in. I don't know. But right now, there was a sense of, well, we're hurtling towards something, but we don't know where. And we should be up here, but we're not. We're stuck down here and things aren't going well. And this went on for a while, but ultimately the British people said no. No. We are done. Whoever they're talking to. You have put us through this for so many years. You have been a disaster. And now we want out. And they kind of made their own future instead of waiting for politicians or the media or whoever to tell them what they should do. They made their own future, either by voting or by simply starting on a new course, whatever that might involve. It's very exciting in a way, but it would take a little bit while longer for it to come about. That's what that felt like. Now, to the US, when I went into the energy of the US economy for 25, this is very weird. I actually didn't quite know what to make of this because I immediately was in a blizzard. There was snow coming into my eyes and I was trying to walk. Everywhere was grey. I couldn't see where I was going. I wondered whether all this snow represented gaslighting or so many things going on at the same time that it was very difficult to know where everything would end up. It's like, no, I just can't see it. It's impossible to know. Where would I put my feet? Which direction would I go in? This blizzard made things very difficult. Now, thinking back to the first Trump administration, this is assuming he's inaugurated and there's a second one, but thinking back to the first one, it was like that every day. This guy has a gift for sucking all the energy out of the room, for getting all the media attention and creating confusion, for creating chaos, for mixing things up in such a way that you never quite know where you stand or where you're going. Maybe it's a bit like that. But I couldn't see my way forward. And because I couldn't, I didn't see something coming that I would have seen had there not been a blizzard. Now, maybe it's gaslighting and it's distracting from what is coming. Or maybe people are so consumed by what the blizzard is that they just forget to look ahead. Or maybe it's just a surprise thing and nothing prepares people for what's coming. It could be like that, but a dark valley. And America, the economy, would have to go through that dark valley. Now, this is based on today's energy, of course, and so things can change between now and then, but it did seem as though something was coming and people didn't see it was coming because they were so consumed and preoccupied with what the blizzard was and trying to get through it and find their way. And suddenly, oh, what is this? So that was the economy for 2025. I assume it's going to be fine, but confusing, something like that. Getting on to America for the whole year, this was particularly interesting. Because when I went into the energy of the USA, I looked out from the vantage point of now across the plane of the year to the other side, to 2026. I've done this before, and it looked like the weather was fine, and the ground was fine, and it was sunny, and it looked like 2025 initially might be all right. But then I said that in 2026, things got a little darker or a little bit more uncertain, and I wondered if that was something to do with the midterms in 2026. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I said previously. When I went into the energy this time, there I was looking out from the vantage point of now, and closer than the hills, the mountains, which represent the interface between 2025 and 2026, closer than those mountains, there was a big cloud of dust. It reminded me of those movies of old where people would look out of a castle and there was dust on the horizon. And when you went in close, you found out it was a bunch of knights on horseback with lances and they were charging the castle. Only they didn't have binoculars back then, so they couldn't see them. It was a bit like that. There was something coming. Not necessarily malevolent, but something that represented change or an affront to the status quo, something like that. When I went into that dust, there was a long line of it, but when I went into it, again, it was like people on horseback trailing banners behind them, and they were galloping at a vast pace towards me, where I was standing, because I walked across the plain. I thought, well, I've got to go. So here I go, 2025. And I walked across the plain, and this cloud of horses with banners and stuff was getting closer and closer to me. And eventually it went by, and I got the feeling that actually the temptation was to focus on the horses and the riders and the lances and the banners and whatever else they had, when in actual fact they were just a mirage, or they were something you could worry about, but why bother? Because they just sort of evaporated when they'd gone by. They were spectres or phantoms in some way, so half the problem was the worry, as it so often is. And what was left was like a field of dust. Or I wouldn't say ashes, because that always conjures up in people's mind they're going to be fires or something. Just dust. As if I came into your living room. I said, "Hi, everybody, and look what I brought with me." And it's the bag from a vacuum cleaner. And I just tipped it all over everywhere. Which I've been known to do. But tipped it over everywhere and then left. And you were left standing in your living room going, why would he do that? Why would he pour the contents of a vacuum cleaner bag all over our lovely, lovely carpet? It had that kind of feeling to it. So this is heading into 2026, I guess, which would tie in with the other pictures that things might get a little bumpy. It's like when the pilot in a plane says there's going to be turbulence and you just strap yourself in and hope for the best. It was a bit like that. Nothing to dread. Nothing I would suggest to fear. Just, it's more about curiosity, really. Like, what is that? Who is going to do that? Who's going to stir up a bit of a fuss that we have to sort out afterwards. That kind of feeling. So it's not the sort of thing that I would fear or dread or worry about or be anxious about at all. It's just like, well, let's just set off. It looks like it's going to be a fairly okay year for most people initially. And then we'll see what that is when we get there. And when we do find out what it is, half of the problem was the importance we attached to it. The horses rode by and it evaporated. We were just left with the dust. So something kicked up the dust. That's what it felt like. Alrighty, I am exhausted. That was a lot of work. But thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the video about the touching the churches and stuff, the energy video on the Enlightened Beings Club channel, description down below. And there'll also be a video about the death of Anne Boleyn and her crossing, Henry VIII's second wife. I'll be doing that in the next few days too. All right, otherwise, I will see you very soon, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.